Our next speaker will be Nathan. He is a person who has been involved with Toastmasters. He's a rather young gentleman, but he joined his Gavel Club. I've known him for 5 years now. I think he first joined Gavel Club when he was just 14, had very good support from family, and he developed and he developed. He started competing in Lions Club and started competing in Rotary Club contests. And just about, I think, every year that he competed, he would win one or both of those events. And last year, he's done better than many of us because he won $5,000 in scholarship money from Lions Club this last year. And he has visited here. In fact, not only that, he won our table topics contest in December. So congratulations to Nathan. Nathan has had some experiences that are different than most of us because he is, over the last few years, has attended in-person education, has attended online education, and been homeschooled. And he's going to present his thoughts and ideas for his qualifying speech, and we'll have you voting at the end of that, and he will be made aware of the results within 24 hours, as is our routine. He has a few personal observations on the changes that have characterized many learning institutions as a result of the pandemic. And we will hear a new way of learning from someone who has been there, as is his title, the shift of educational methods in a post-pandemic environment, a person I am very proud to be his sponsor and mentor and coach for this event, our Nathan son. Nathan?
3 years ago, I dissected a frog for a high school biology class. It was a very educational but messy experience. And one thing that I do know about it is that that event will always be a cherished part of my educational experience. One minute, the teacher was going over pictures and diagrams, and he was explaining to us how to dissect a frog. He'd say things like, okay, this is where you cut off the little leg, and this is how you open up the torso. But to be honest, personally, I didn't care. I didn't care about these things because to me, these concepts seem to be rather vague and boring. However, these academic and distant concepts suddenly became very real the moment that my teacher announced that we would be taking an actual frog and filleting his tiny little body with our scalpels. For me, these concepts on dissecting a frog became very real the moment that I could put them into practice. Dissecting that frog helped me to learn not only from books and videos, but from personal experience. Now, students are facing a problem. How do you dissect a frog over the internet? My fellow Toastmasters, it is my privilege today to speak on a subject that is of paramount importance to me and to you as well. Believe it or not, the leaders of our educational system today are facing the same question. Are online learning methods an effective substitute for in-person learning? Throughout the past few years, we have seen a sweeping and unprecedented change in the educational methods that our system uses to teach our students. I remember when the schools were initially closed due to the COVID pandemic. We were promised a brief 2-week quarantine to flatten the curve and to ensure that everyone was protected. Now, at that point, I had been laboring away very hard at school, doing my work. And to be honest, a short, restful break seemed like a very reasonable measure. It was almost like an unexpected vacation of sorts. And so, of course, I saw no problem with it. After 2 short weeks, I expected everything to start getting back to normal. However, things did not get back to normal. These 2 short weeks gradually turned into months of isolation with absolutely no end in sight. 2 years after this initial breakout of COVID, things are still not back to normal. Schools have opened, but to a limited extent, and there is still a very heavy emphasis on online learning methods for our students. Even now, after most people are vaccinated and the infection rate has gone down, many schools have still decided to maintain online learning platforms as an option for their students. Ultimately, it seems to me that online learning will be an important part of our educational system for the foreseeable future. Therefore, it would be within our best interests to understand this procedure and to make it as efficient as possible. In addition to citing evidence and studies from many prominent sources, I would also like to present my own personal observations of the online learning system in both high school and college. Now, from the start, it seems that the move from physical to online learning has brought many advantages. But like any other system, it has to be constantly refined in order to make it as beneficial as possible for all students. I am always encouraged by what Einstein once said, that in the middle of difficulty lies opportunity. When confronted with failure, the best thing that we can do is to see this as an opportunity for improvement. It seems that one of the greatest benefits of distance and online learning is efficiency. Current technology allows you to reach thousands of people all throughout the world. Distance is no longer a barrier to effective learning. I recently hosted a presentation by a very famous historian all the way in Washington, D.C. He gave a speech on ancient Greek philosophy and somehow managed to make it entertaining. Everybody enjoyed the speech, and the speech was just the right price because it was free. But what made this speech so entertaining was the fact that this speaker never even had to leave his living room. There were no travel expenses or hotel expenses because everything was done right from his home over the internet. With distance and online learning, teachers can maximize their influence while minimizing costs. And students no longer need to waste time and money by traveling back and forth from school. Online learning can work, even for a subject that is as complicated as law. In 2019, Forbes magazine reported that online learners were 2 times more likely to pass the first-year student law exam than in-person students. And if it is done properly, online learning can be just as engaging as more traditional methods. Distance and online learning is a wonderful tool to improve education. However, I would be lying to you today if I said that it was perfect. You see, one disadvantage is lack of access. Even in the 21st century, many American students, unfortunately, do not have reliable access to the internet. A recent 2021 study conducted by the University of Southern California revealed that many low-income households in California have limited internet connection. This study found that, quote, nearly 1 in 5 low-income households reported without going with internet for extensive periods of time. 1 in 5 low-income households said that often their internet was not accessible to them. Online learning only works if you can go online. And this lack of technology unjustly robs many students of the opportunity to learn and to receive an education that will benefit them for the rest of their lives. Online learning also damages the social needs of students. Last year, CBS reported that a young boy from Sacramento, California, became a victim of depression. He shot himself in front of his teachers and classmates during an online meeting. In 2020, the Center for Disease Control found that 1 in 4 young people have experienced suicidal thoughts. And this is largely due to the lockdowns and the extended isolation that was supposed to combat the spread of COVID. Every day we hear of more people who are losing their will to live. It is true that we can see and hear each other over the internet. However, I believe that many will agree with me that there is a distinct human element that is not present when we are meeting online. Now, another extremely damaging instance of online learning and a huge disadvantage, in my opinion, is something that I call the boredom factor. All of you esteemed Toastmasters in this meeting, I'm sure, have been paying very close attention to my speech today. And I'm also certain that no one during this entire presentation has gotten bored or distracted. All of you have been paying close attention to this speech and to everything that I've been saying. But unfortunately, many students may not have that same level of concentration and self-control. You see, the average student may have to deal with seeing their teachers lecture for hours over the internet. And this happens repeatedly, day after day, week after week, and month after month. They have to repeatedly deal with this. And for many, the temptation of looking at videos on the internet or maybe checking their email is just too great. This is what happens when we go to online learning. There is a definite boredom factor that is present. To be perfectly honest, while attending school is primarily an educational endeavor, it appears that there is definitely a strong social component as well. We learn to work creatively with our classmates and ultimately to grow as individuals. And it just seems to me that this experience is not the same when we communicate virtually from our living rooms while staring at a screen and speaking into a microphone. Distance and online learning are amazing gifts of technology, but can they replace dedicated teachers and mentors? At the end of the day, we must ask ourselves, what is necessary for a good education? When I think about what defines a good education, one word comes to mind: people. A computer cannot replace loving parents and dedicated teachers. And the reason that we can all expect a brighter future is because of the people in our lives. Like Einstein, I believe that in the middle of difficulty lies opportunity. And during this crisis, there is the opportunity to help those who are less fortunate. I happen to know that there are many resourceful, talented, and experienced people in the audience today. Some of you have spent many years working in the professional field and have a vast reservoir of knowledge and experience. Some of you may even be professional educators who feel that perhaps you could do something more for your students. Well, the answer is that you can do more. Personally, I've always appreciated it when my professors and teachers took extra time out of their day to help me with difficult questions or to understand some new concept. Even outside of the classroom, I've been extremely fortunate to meet people who have donated their time willingly to help me to improve as a Toastmaster and as a student. Many times, this has happened informally. It didn't occur on a strict time schedule for a school, and I had to take the initiative to ask questions and seek help from those experienced individuals. And personally, I believe that this is the solution. At the end of the day, so many traditional outlets for education, like schools, have been crippled by government regulations, and students have to be more creative in finding independent ways to learn. We have to help ourselves, and we have to help each other. Students need to take back control of their own education. Now, I have had the good fortune for many years as a homeschooled student. And this is exactly what the name implies. I was studying mainly from home. Now, whenever I told people that I was homeschooled, oftentimes they'd assume one of two things. They might think to themselves, oh, look, this is a kid who's homeschooled, so obviously he doesn't have strict academic schedules. He doesn't have to worry about doing school. He can just play video games. He can look at the internet, and he can just waste time all day because there is absolutely no structure. Other people might assume that I, as a homeschooler, have had a very hard life. I haven't had access to other individuals to talk to outside of my family, and I am socially stunted and awkward and shy. Now, as I'm sure you can probably notice by now, neither of these two things are true. However, what is true is that homeschooling has taught me to be more independent and creative as a student. Whenever I needed more information on certain things, I didn't have the luxury of simply going to my teacher. I had to look at books and go on the internet, watch videos to learn things. And once again, I believe that this is an integral part of the solution. We as students must become more independent because, as I'm sure you've probably noticed, everybody is more or less homeschooled because now we're all stuck at home for the most part, and we have to look at the computer. We don't have access to the schools per se. Some of you in the audience may have expected me to give a revolutionary idea that will immediately eradicate all of our educational problems right this instant. But that just isn't realistic. COVID is not the last crisis that our educational system will have to face. But in spite of these difficulties, we will emerge triumphant as long as we diligently continue to find better ways of improving the lives of our students. Our system of online learning is far from perfect. It has many pros and cons, and it must be improved in order to ensure that the education of our students is as comprehensive and as beneficial as possible. Nothing is more important to learning than dedicated parents, teachers, and students who strive to improve themselves and to help others. If we want to change in our education, that change must start with us. Always remember that you have the power to seize opportunity in the middle of difficulty. Mr. Jameson, over to you.
Thank you, Nathan.